When Melania Trump learned about the offensive remarks made by prominent TV hosts about her son, Barron, no one could have anticipated her response. What unfolded next left the media world in absolute shock. Before we continue, thank you for being here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and if you enjoy thought-provoking stories like this, a like and subscribe would mean the world to us. Now, back to the story. The remarks weren't just inappropriate, they crossed a line, one that most parents could never overlook. Melania, often known for her reserved and diplomatic public persona, decided this time was different. While the world waited for her to react, she remained silent. Days passed, but behind closed doors, something was in motion. Instead of releasing a hasty statement or addressing the media directly, she quietly reached out to a trusted circle. This wasn't just about defending her son, it was about addressing a much larger issue. The online cruelty, the unchecked behavior of those in power, and the vulnerability of children in the public eye were all at the forefront of her mind. What happened next was nothing short of unexpected. In a private meeting with a leading advocacy group, she laid out her intentions. But she didn't stop there. Melania personally funded a series of workshops designed to educate parents, teachers, and children on handling bullying in all forms, whether online or offline. Her actions weren't publicized at first. There were no press releases, no social media announcements. But word got out, and the story began to gain traction. Critics expected a PR-driven stunt, but what they found was authentic and deeply personal. This wasn't about damage control or image, it was about protecting her son and countless others like him. Then, a handwritten note surfaced. It wasn't addressed to the media or the TV hosts, it was for Barron. Insiders described it as a deeply personal message from a mother to her son, reminding him of his worth and strength in the face of cruelty. Though the exact words remain private, its existence added a layer of humanity to a situation the public was quick to scrutinize. The shift in public perception was striking. People who once viewed her as distant began to reconsider. And as for those who made the remarks? Well, their response, or lack thereof, spoke volumes. Melania Trump, long seen as measured and reserved, had a side few outside her closest circle truly understood. To the world, she was the polished first lady, the composed public figure. But beneath that calm exterior was a mother fiercely protective of her child. For years, Barron Trump lived under a spotlight no child should endure, becoming a silent figure in the media's relentless commentary. And yet, Melania had always stayed quiet. She let the noise pass, shielding her son as best she could. But this time, the insults weren't just an attack on her family, they were a public dismissal of basic decency. The comments were cold, calculated, and aimed at someone who had done nothing to warrant such attention. For a mother, that was a pain not easily ignored. When does silence stop being a strength and start becoming complicity? For Melania, the answer came sharply that day. The world expected a dramatic response, something headline-grabbing or confrontational. But that wasn't her style. Instead, she chose a path that no one saw coming. It wasn't about issuing a public rebuttal. There were no fiery interviews or carefully worded press releases. Instead, Melania acted with precision and purpose. She reached out to organizations focused on online harassment, quietly initiating a project aimed at combating the very issues that had plagued her family. But here's where it gets interesting, she didn't make it about herself or Barron. The workshops she helped launch were designed to protect every child navigating the complexities of online bullying. Her approach was quiet but deeply impactful, creating ripples far beyond the immediate controversy. What's the right way to fight back when faced with something so personal? Is it better to take the high road or meet criticism head-on? Melania's response seemed to blend both approaches, using the power of her platform without turning the issue into a spectacle. What's even more surprising is how the story evolved from there. The TV hosts who had once laughed at Barron's expense were suddenly under a different kind of scrutiny. Their actions, once dismissed as harmless, became a focal point for public debate. But rather than revel in their discomfort, Melania stayed quiet. Her mission wasn't about revenge, it was about fostering accountability and protecting others from similar attacks. By now, you might be wondering, did the media learn from this? Did the people involved ever apologize, or was this just another moment that would fade with time? The truth is more complicated than a simple yes or no. But one thing is certain: Melania's actions started a conversation that couldn't be ignored. And what about Barron? Through it all, he remained out of the spotlight, supported by a mother who had turned a painful experience into a force for change. It's a testament to the lengths parents will go to protect their children, even when the odds feel stacked against them. The controversy began on an ordinary broadcast. A pair of prominent TV hosts, known for their sharp commentary and casual banter, veered into dangerous territory. What started as a light-hearted discussion quickly turned into an offhand remark about Barron Trump, one that wasn't just inappropriate but deeply unfair. The words were cutting, aimed at a child who had no voice in the public arena. Their tone suggested they thought it was harmless, perhaps even funny. But for anyone watching, especially parents, the boundaries were unmistakably crossed. To hear such personal, unkind commentary about someone so young was jarring. And Barron, just a teenager, didn't have the luxury of privacy. Every word spoken about him echoed far beyond that studio, amplified by headlines and social media chatter. Barron has always lived a life unlike most kids his age. Born into wealth and fame, many assume he's untouchable, immune to the struggles that ordinary children face. But fame doesn't shield a child from hurt. If anything, it magnifies it. Imagine being in his shoes, growing up with cameras following your every move, unable to escape the judgment of strangers. Now, imagine hearing your name dragged into conversations you never asked to be a part of. It's easy to forget that behind the headlines is a real person, a teenager just trying to find his place in the world. The remarks didn't just target a public figure, they diminished a young boy's humanity, reducing him to a punchline. And then there's Melania. As a mother, she's watched her son endure the pressures of a public life he didn't choose. For years, she remained silent, taking the high road while quietly shielding Barron from the worst of it. But this time was different. This time, the insult was too personal to ignore. The backlash against the hosts was swift. Clips of their comments circulated online, drawing sharp criticism from viewers who felt the line had been crossed. Some questioned how adults in positions of influence could target a child so casually. Others demanded accountability. Yet, in the middle of it all, Melania remained quiet, at least publicly. This silence wasn't hesitation. It wasn't indecision. It was the calm before the storm. Melania was preparing to act in a way no one expected. But what exactly was her plan? And how far was she willing to go to defend her son? The moment she made her move, the conversation shifted entirely. What happened next wasn't just about defending Barron, it was about standing up for children everywhere who face similar struggles. Melania Trump's response wasn't immediate, but it was deliberate. For days, she avoided public comment, fueling speculation about how she would handle such a personal and public attack on her son. Then, quietly but decisively, she made her move. Behind closed doors, Melania consulted a team of high-profile attorneys. This wasn't about silencing criticism, she had endured that for years. This was different. The conversation wasn't just about protecting Barron, it was about setting a precedent. The comments crossed a boundary, and she was determined to make sure no other child would endure the same. The decision to pursue legal action wasn't taken lightly. Legal experts weighed in, discussing the complexities of defamation and the unique challenges of being in the public eye. Yet, Melania remained steadfast. Her legal team drafted a formal notice, sending shockwaves through media circles. The message was clear: this was no ordinary response, and she wasn't interested in a simple apology. What made her approach so compelling was its depth. This wasn't just about rectifying a single insult, it was about holding accountable those who wielded influence carelessly. While the public expected a private settlement or a quiet resolution, Melania's actions spoke volumes about her intentions. The media, naturally, couldn't resist the story. Headlines began flooding news cycles, some applauding her courage, others questioning her motives. Melania Trump takes a stand, read one. Legal war over Barron Trump's dignity, proclaimed another. The debate spilled into social media, where opinions were as divided as ever. Some praised her for defending her son, calling her a mother first and a public figure second. Others criticized her, accusing her of using the legal system as a weapon. In the midst of the uproar, her lawyers issued a statement: "This is not about publicity. It is about protecting the dignity and well-being of a child, and holding those in power to a higher standard." The statement was brief, but its message was undeniable. The most intriguing part? The case wasn't just about demanding an apology. Sources close to the legal team hinted that Melania was pursuing something far more significant, an outcome that would send shockwaves through the media world. What Melania sought in this case wasn't just justice for her son, it was a message to everyone, one insider revealed. The specifics of her demands were kept under wraps, but whispers of policy changes and strict accountability standards began to circulate. As the legal battle gained momentum, reactions from the public poured in. Supporters rallied behind her, seeing her as a mother fighting against an unjust system. Critics, however, accused her of overreaching. Questions arose: was this a bold stand or an overreaction? Could one case truly change how children of public figures were treated, or was this an isolated incident? And yet, amidst the noise, one thing became clear: Melania wasn't backing down. She wasn't looking for a quick win or an easy resolution. Her actions were purposeful, and her silence in the media only amplified the drama. The courtroom became the stage for a battle that was about much more than a single comment. As the case moved forward, the stakes grew higher. Would the legal system side with Melania's argument that public figures' children deserve the same respect as any other child? Or would the opposing side claim that fame comes with an unavoidable cost, even for the youngest members of a family? What do you think? Should the media be held legally accountable for comments made about public figures' children, or does this set a dangerous precedent? Let us know in the comments below. This is a conversation worth having. The courtroom was packed. Journalists lined the benches, pens poised, while cameras outside captured every arrival and departure. The trial had become more than just a legal battle, it was a cultural flashpoint. For many, it symbolized a growing debate over accountability in the media and the protection of minors in public life. Melania Trump entered the courtroom with her signature composure, her legal team by her side. She didn't speak publicly, but her presence was commanding. This was no longer about perception or politics. It was about principle. The case unfolded with intense scrutiny. Key witnesses testified about the reach and impact of the host's comments, emphasizing how such remarks could harm a young individual already under constant public gaze. The defense argued that freedom of speech allowed for such commentary, attempting to downplay the severity of the situation. But it was during one emotional exchange that the courtroom fell silent. An expert on child psychology took the stand, explaining in detail the lasting impact of such public ridicule on a young person's mental health. The audience listened intently as the expert described the unique vulnerabilities of children like Barron, who live their lives under a magnifying glass. It was a turning point, one that visibly shifted the mood in the room. Melania's team didn't just focus on the comments themselves, they highlighted the broader implications. They argued that if powerful figures in the media could target a child without consequences, it set a dangerous precedent for others. This wasn't about suppressing criticism, it was about drawing a line between fair commentary and personal attacks on those unable to defend themselves. As the trial neared its conclusion, the atmosphere was tense. The defense maintained their stance, but it was clear that the weight of public opinion and the evidence presented had taken its toll. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the verdict. The judge's ruling was a shock. Not only did the court find the remarks to be defamatory, but the decision came with a powerful statement. The judge emphasized the responsibility that comes with public influence, particularly when discussing individuals outside the sphere of political discourse. The verdict mandated a public apology from the hosts and significant financial restitution, which Melania immediately announced would be directed toward initiatives to combat online harassment and bullying. The reaction was immediate. Supporters of Melania's stance celebrated the outcome, hailing it as a victory for families everywhere. Critics, however, raised questions about the balance between free speech and personal accountability. Regardless of the divided opinions, one thing was certain: the case had sparked a national conversation. In the days that followed, the TV hosts issued their apologies. While some viewed their words as genuine, others saw them as reluctant and calculated. But for Melania, the focus wasn't on their regret, it was on the broader impact of the case. For Barron, life didn't magically return to normal, but the victory brought a sense of protection and validation. A source close to the family revealed that Melania was deeply emotional after the verdict, calling it a moment of justice not just for her son, but for all children who have been unfairly targeted. This case wasn't just about one family, it was about setting boundaries in a world where public figures often forget the power their words hold. Melania's decision to fight back sent a clear message: there are limits, even in the realm of public discourse. What do you think? Did this case achieve justice, or does it raise more questions about the balance between free speech and accountability? Let us know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. The courtroom victory marked a turning point, not just for Melania and Barron Trump, but for the broader conversation around public accountability. At its heart, this wasn't about silencing critics or controlling the narrative, it was about drawing a line that many felt had been blurred for too long. In a world where words travel faster than ever, and influence can be wielded recklessly, this case forced everyone to take a step back. Free speech is a cornerstone of democracy, but where does that freedom end when it begins to harm those who cannot defend themselves? And when public figures' children, like Barron, are thrust into the spotlight, what safeguards should exist to protect their well-being? The story of Melania's bold stand serves as a reminder that fame does not erase humanity. Behind every headline, every viral comment, there are real people, children, families, who bear the weight of those words. It's easy to forget, especially in a culture that thrives on fast-moving news cycles and unfiltered opinions. But this case showed that accountability is not just a concept, it's a responsibility. So, where do we go from here? Does this ruling change how public figures and their families are treated, or is it just one moment in an ongoing battle for decency in media and public discourse? And what about those watching this unfold? How do we, as individuals, contribute to a culture that values respect without stifling necessary dialogue? The question remains: should public figures, especially their children, be off limits when it comes to criticism? Or does this case simply redefine the boundaries of what's acceptable? Share your thoughts in the comments, we want to hear from you. This wasn't just a story about one family or one courtroom victory. It was a moment that challenged us all to consider the balance between freedom and responsibility, a balance that affects not just the famous, but anyone navigating the public sphere. Thank you for watching and being part of this conversation. If this story moved you or gave you a new perspective, don't forget to like and subscribe. Together, we can continue exploring the stories that shape our understanding of the world and each other.